We hear about 700,000 Palestinian refugees, but not the 850,000 Jews who were expelled by Arab countries. It's not just European Jews who ended up in Israel. Let's talk about the forgotten ethnic cleansing that created Mizrahi Israel. When most people think about Israel, they picture Jews from Europe, Holocaust survivors, refugees from Nazi Germany, immigrants from Poland, Russia, or France. But more than half of Israeli Jews today are not from Europe at all. Where are they from? The Middle East and North Africa. They're Mizrahi Jews, Jews who lived in Arab lands for centuries, even millennia. They spoke Arabic. They dressed like their neighbors. They were Iraqi, Egyptian, Yemeni, Moroccan, Syrian, Libyan, and Tunisian. But they didn't leave those countries by choice. They were driven out. Before 1948 and the early 1970s, over 850,000 Jews were expelled or fled from Arab countries. They were forced out by rising anti-Semitism, violence, and state-sponsored persecution. Most had lived peacefully among Muslims for generations, but when the State of Israel was born in 1948, everything changed. Overnight, the Jews became enemies of the state. They were accused of being Zionist spies. Their businesses were looted. Their synagogues were burned. Many were arrested or killed. Entire communities that had existed since Babylonian times were wiped out. Take Iraq, for example. In 1941, years before Israel's founding, a Nazi-inspired pogrom called the Farhud swept through Baghdad. Hundreds of Jews were murdered. Thousands were injured. Homes and shops were destroyed. And then after 1948, it got even worse. Iraqi Jews were stripped of citizenship. Their assets were frozen. And Zionism was declared a capital offense. Within just a few years, nearly the entire Jewish population of Iraq, we're talking about over 120,000 people, had fled. Egypt, same story. After the 1948 war, Jews were imprisoned, expelled, or they had their property seized. By the 1960s, there were barely any Jews left in Cairo or Alexandria. In Libya, Jews were banned from voting or holding the public office. Synagogues were destroyed. And by 1967, most had fled after anti-Jewish riots broke out during the Six-Day War. Yemen, Syria, Algeria, Tunisia. The pattern was nearly identical in every one of these countries. Once the Arab world turned against Israel, it turned against its Jews. It was a massive ethnic cleansing, quiet, largely forgotten, and rarely acknowledged. No UN agency was created for Mizrahi refugees. No global protests, no right of return campaign. Instead, Israel absorbed them. Hundreds of thousands of traumatized Jews from Arab countries were flown in, housed in refugee camps, tents, and eventually integrated into Israeli society. And it wasn't easy. They faced racism. They were marginalized by the European elite who dominated early Israeli politics. Many lived in poverty, dire poverty for decades. But they stayed, they rebuilt, and they became the backbone of Israel's population. Today, their children and grandchildren are Israeli politicians, artists, judges, soldiers, and scientists. Mizrahi Jews make up the majority of Israel's Jewish population. Yet their history is rarely told. We talk rightly about the Palestinian Nakba, but we never talk about the Mizrahi Nakba. One people's tragedy is world famous. The other's has been erased. This isn't a competition over suffering. It's about completing the picture, though. Understanding that the Middle East conflict created two major refugee populations, not one. And here's a very key difference. Most Palestinian refugees remained in camps, stateless, rejected by Arab host countries. But Jewish refugees from Arab lands were not kept in limbo. They were taken in, given citizenship, and asked to build a future. Israel didn't abandon them. It became their only safe place. And it still is. So the next time you hear someone say, Israel is a colonial project made up of white Europeans, remember this. Over half of Israeli Jews come from the Middle East, and they didn't come as colonizers. They came as refugees, not from Europe, but from Baghdad, from Damascus, from Cairo, from Fez. They didn't build Israel by displacing others. They built it while healing from their own displacement. This is the story of Mizrahi Israel, and it deserves to be heard.